What exactly made Steve Rogers worthy to wield Mjolnir in Endgame? And to build off of that, would Black Widow have been worthy? Stick around to find out. And if you like Marvel Comics, be sure to drop a like down below so I know to make more Marvel content in the future. So what exactly makes someone worthy to lift Thor's hammer? It's a pretty vaguely defined concept. Odin didn't exactly write up a list of qualities that explains his definition of worthy. So I did. Yep, Odin can shove it, I'm gonna do his job for him. Now to clarify, all of these requirements I chose to make someone worthy are also qualities that would make someone a good king of Asgard. Because that's the exact reason Odin cast out Thor in the first place, right? He wasn't worthy to be coronated as king, so Odin took away his power and banished him to Midgard until he learned his lesson. With that said, here are my Mjolnir requirements. Selflessness. The king of Asgard shouldn't be selfish. He should live to serve his people, not to consolidate power like a tyrant. This is something Odin learned right after he raised Hela, and it's clearly very important to him. A warrior's spirit. Obviously, the king of Asgard must be able to do battle and derive joy from vanquishing evil. Otherwise, he might tire of or cower from a fight and fail to protect his people. A warrior can't be afraid to kill the enemies of his empire or those that might harm the innocent. Self-assurance. Asgard's ruler should always have faith in himself and his actions. Otherwise, he may pause when he should have acted, and that could be detrimental. Humility. This one is obvious. It's the one that originally made Thor go from unworthy to worthy. The king of Asgard needs to understand and respect the other peoples of the Nine Realms. Thor learned this by growing close to Midgardians and choosing to protect them, and eventually becoming an Avenger. Humility means he doesn't brag or boast. He doesn't think of himself as above anyone else, despite his strength. Okay, with that out of the way, we can go ahead and test my rules against everyone who has attempted to lift the hammer. So, who's been worthy and who hasn't? Loki, Tony Stark, the Hulk, Rhodey, Peter Parker, and Clint Barton have all failed to lift the hammer in one way or another. We know that Thor Odinson, the Vision, and Steve Rogers are all worthy. For my list to be accurate, Thor, Vision, and Cap each have to meet all of the requirements, while everyone else has to fail at least one of them. So let's go down the list. Loki. Obviously unworthy. He meets only one of the requirements. He's never acted selflessly in a single moment throughout all of his appearances. He did save Thor from Thanos, but that was clearly just a thinly veiled attempt to kill the Titan. Neither is he humble. He pretty clearly talks down to the Hulk in the Avengers, calling himself a god. Loki doesn't possess the spirit of a warrior. All of his fights are filled with trickery and illusions. He never enjoys vanquishing evil. He does seem to enjoy killing sometimes, but that doesn't cut it. All that said, he is self-assured. I don't recall a single moment he's doubted himself or wavered in a decision. So Loki is definitely unworthy. Tony Stark. Like most of the Avengers, he comes close. He's definitely selfless. I am Iron Man. Need I say more on that? He's clearly self-assured. Even when facing down his own colossal failures, such as the creation of Ultron, he's very quick to jump back into action and rectify the situation. But he's not a warrior. Tony is a scientist, an engineer. He stops evil because he feels an emotional obligation to do so, instilled by Yinsen's dying words, "Don't waste your life, Stark." Vanquishing evildoers isn't its own reward to Tony, even if he has quippy dialogue while doing it. And I don't think I really need to mention this, but he's not exactly humble. I think the correct words are textbook narcissist. The Hulk. Easy. The Hulk isn't selfless, nor is he humble. He has a very simple nature, mostly described by "Hulk strongest there is" and "Hulk smash." That said, he probably has the greatest warrior spirit out of all the Avengers. Nothing brings him more joy than beating up bad guys and stopping big monsters. And I don't think self-assurance is even a factor. If Hulk wants to do something, he does that thing. Rhodey. He's very similar to Tony, at least for the purposes of this list. He's selfless, he dedicated his life to serving in the Air Force and later as an Avenger. He's self-assured, he saw Tony's misuse of the armor, so he went and took a suit for himself, without a second thought. He even has a warrior spirit. He clearly enjoys what he does, cracking jokes and keeping track of how many Ultron drones he destroyed on the outside of his armor. Unlike Tony, he was a soldier, not a scientist. That said, Rhodey isn't humble. He tells the same story over and over again at the dinner party from Age of Ultron, looking for praise and approval, and he underestimates the strength of Captain Marvel after she saved Tony. Not humble, not worthy. Peter Parker. He did actually grab onto the hammer. It was when he webbed to it as it was flying over him from the Outriders were attacking him. When Cap yelled, "Queens!" it pulled him off the ground and he had no control over it, so he can't be worthy. That said, Peter does come close. He's obviously selfless. He regularly puts his duty as Spider-Man over his desires as Peter Parker. He's humble, as he constantly feels the need to introduce himself, compliment other people, and do his best to impress the other Avengers. He doesn't quite meet the requirements for being a warrior, though. He is notorious for cracking jokes and having fun while he stops criminals and saves people. That's sort of his whole thing. But Peter doesn't kill. It's an active choice he makes, not to kill villains. And unfortunately, Peter isn't self-assured either. He doubts himself a lot. He underestimates his own abilities, and he relies a ton on Tony Stark. Peter is probably just as good of a person as Captain America, but he isn't up to snuff in the eyes of Odin. Clint Barton. Yeah, Hawkeye is selfless. He was just as willing to jump off that cliff as Black Widow was. And of course, he's self-assured. He joined Team Cap in Civil War after just one phone call. He's humble too. He obviously understands his place on the team as just the arrow guy, as evident from his speech to Scarlet Witch. But he doesn't have a warrior spirit. It's pretty clear that he's fine with killing bad guys, but he just wants to live a simple life with his family, and that his work as an Avenger is only due to a sense of obligation. We know this is true because after his family was taken away from him, he didn't go join the Avengers and protect the world. He used his skills to kill the criminals he thinks didn't deserve to survive. He didn't take the path of a heroic warrior, but one of a broken man. And now we finally come to the worthy characters. First up, Thor. Obviously he's humble. It's what his whole first movie was about. He's clearly selfless and kind. His time spent saving Asgard and Earth is evident of that. And he too has the spirit of a warrior. He frequently smiles and goofs around in battle, and he willingly spends his time pursuing adventure and heroism. And lastly, he's always self-assured. Thor doesn't waver or doubt himself. He never has issues with his self-esteem. Wait a minute. Yes, he does. He totally does. That's the whole point of his character arc in Endgame. He clearly feels as though he's useless. He can't properly serve his role as defender of the weak. And yet, he's still worthy. So, being self-assured actually isn't a requirement for being worthy to wield Mjolnir. If that's the case, well, yeah, it checks out. Both Vision and Captain America meet the other three requirements. They're both selfless, choosing the fate of the world over their own lives. They're both humble. Steve considers himself just a kid from Brooklyn, and Vision clearly doesn't value his life above that of others. He's even dating a human, so he can't see himself as above her. And they both have a warrior spirit. The only thing Cap wanted to do his whole life was serve in the military and protect people. He obviously enjoys his time spent taking down bad guys because it's the right thing to do. And what's his warrior spirit more than, "I can do this all day"? Vision even cracks a joke as he destroys the last remaining piece of Ultron. So that's it. To lift Thor's hammer, you need to be a selfless, humble warrior. It makes sense that Odin wouldn't make self-assuredness a requirement for being king of Asgard. If he had been less hasty in the decisions of his younger days, he wouldn't have conquered so much and killed so many. And now that we know this, I think it's fair to say that Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, would have been worthy to lift Mjolnir. She should have tried when she had the chance. It would have made that scene a lot funnier. And now that I put a little more thought into it, there's one other character who could likely lift Mjolnir. Black Panther. Yep, T'Challa is clearly selfless and he has a warrior spirit. I don't think I need to explain that. And his whole movie was all about learning to rectify the failures of his father and stop seeing Wakanda as above the rest of the world. He started to see Wakanda as an origin of aid for the rest of the world. It's the same lesson of humility that Thor needed to learn to become worthy. I mean, T'Challa is already a king. Of course he meets Odin's requirements. Man, could you imagine the freaking Black Panther wielding Mjolnir? How would the vibranium in his suit absorb the lightning? Ah, man, the fact that I get to make this theory about a mainstream movie is really cool. I'm super glad Endgame turned out the way it did. It was the perfect capstone to this huge saga of the MCU. It's definitely my favorite movie of the franchise. Which of the MCU movies is your favorite, and why? Let me know down in those comments. And by the way, I'm not done discussing Marvel just yet. I've got a video coming to discuss Captain Marvel, and I know that's a hot button issue. So make sure to subscribe and ring that bell to see when that video drops. I've been Beware. Stay frosty.